Hello there. Welcome into a Friday edition of the show. I am so glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new Extra Sports 1300 app for free, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and well-being for all. And it is a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program. And I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call them in or you can text them in. A lot going on today. Let's start with hockey, shall we? Jared Bednar says it's on.
I'm treating these next 5 games like it's playoffs because we need points. We're playing the 2 teams coming up here that we're fighting with for, playoffs. And, immediately fighting with is Calgary and Vancouver. We're playing them both in their building, so that's this week coming up. Then we got the Oilers again, and they're all big points. We got these 2 at home, and so that's how I'm going to treat them.
Playoffs start now for the Colorado Avalanche, or at least this is a playoff preview, these next 5 games. Now, it's worth noting that Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton are part of a Canadian road swing. They still have a couple of games before that, including tonight against the St. Louis Blues. So while Jared Bednar is treating it like the playoffs, it is not a playoff caliber team that they are playing. But this, I think in a lot of ways, it speaks to Jared Bednar's frustration with this team. Coming off of a stretch where, while he liked the way they played, the results were not there. And now is the time for the Colorado Avalanche to get results. 3 games since the trade, less of an excuse anymore. They certainly played well enough to win all 3 of these recent games. They only won 1 of them. It's Jared Bednar instilling a results-oriented mindset into his team. It's not about the process anymore. It's about the results. They need these points. And I think it's smart not even to wait to make such a proclamation before they play Calgary and Vancouver. Because if they go in with a playoff mindset, playoff mentality, and he's going to treat them like playoff games, then they should have very little issue tonight with the St. Louis Blues. They should be able to build up a few points before they even get to those games against those other playoff contenders. And I think that's the calculation for Jared Bednar. If they're focused on the result, if they're treating it like playoffs, if he's going to coach the game like it's playoffs, they should bank some points before they go to Calgary and Edmonton and Vancouver. And that's what makes yesterday's lines that he had out at practice a little bit more telling. There's another layer to it. It's no longer Jared Bednar, master tinkerer. The lines that were out on the ice yesterday, which was Lehkonen, McKinnon, and Natchez, with Mittelstadt centering the second line with Drouin. Obviously, no Valeri Nichushkin back yet. But that's it. That's Jared Bednar saying, if the playoffs started today, this is how I would adjust the lines. Valeri Nichushkin obviously changes the plans a little bit. But these lines tonight are not Jared Bednar experimenting. They're him thinking these are the best lines. Wood, Colton, and Drury on the third line, Logan O'Connor down on the fourth line, Mackenzie Blackwood in net. And I think there's another layer to this, which is we all know that after the Mikko Rantanen trade, if the Avalanche are serious about going after a Stanley Cup, there has to be another move. And this is Jared Bednar's way of kind of saying, okay, here's the best lineup I got, given what I currently have. Let's assess over the next 5 games. Then here comes the Four Nations face-off. And then a week or two after that, it's the trade deadline. So these 5 games are going to be important, not just for potential playoff positioning or playoff qualification, but it will also be, should be a good exercise for Chris McFarland as well, as he tries to assess what the next move will be. This team needs a defenseman, certainly. And I would say that's the top priority, but I think this Avs team is having a lot of conversations about every position on their team, maybe save for goalie. I think everywhere else, they're having conversations. So this is a chance to say, all right, here's the best lines I got in my estimation. I'm mix and matching the personnel you gave me, Chris McFarland, for games that I'm putting a ton of importance on. Evaluate it and make a move. Now, it's not that, Jared Bednar, I think, is more focused on his team's mentality and the importance of getting these points. I don't think he's doing this for Chris McFarland's benefit. What I'm saying is Chris McFarland should look at this 5-game stretch as an incredibly important stretch to evaluate what the next move needs to be. And there needs to be a next move, or the Avalanche definitely punted on this season. If they really think that they can still, with trading a player as important to them as Mikko Rantanen, if they still believe that they can get on track and win a Stanley Cup, we're going to see them make another move, and then at least one of their next moves will have to be something fairly significant. So if this is a playoff preview for the Colorado Avalanche, the guy, obviously the intrigue is still there with Natchez and still there with Jack Drury. This has got to be Casey Middlestat. This is your last stand, buddy. Right? He has been wildly inconsistent. If these next 5 games are pseudo playoff games, got to see something for Casey Middlestat. Because he gave nothing to the Avs last year in the postseason, which at the time was forgivable because he just arrived, right? Arrived middle of the season. It's difficult. It's a guy with no playoff experience, having come over from Buffalo. It was all understandable. But the idea was, okay, now this year he goes all season being productive and then into the playoffs. If he's not productive over these next 5 games, with supposedly more depth on the Avalanche than they had a week ago, then I think it's a really difficult thing for Chris McFarland, because in order to be, how can you expect him to produce in the postseason if Jared Bednar marks these 5 games as pseudo playoffs and he doesn't produce? So I think that the conversation around what the Avs need to do at the trade deadline will be largely formed over these next 5 games. So that starts tonight with St. Louis, but the big ones are obviously the road games, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, not necessarily in that order. Now, another piece of news out of the National Hockey League, and the timing of this is quite interesting given the news of the last week regarding the Colorado Avalanche. The numbers for the cap came out today. And the cap is going to jump $7.5 million from this year to next year. Which obviously begs the question, if you're going to have more money in cap space than you do now, why trade Mikko Rantanen? And Chris McFarland absolutely knew that this was coming. You and I knew this was coming. I've been talking about the salary cap jumping for a while now because it was part of the reason why I wasn't panicked at all, or I wouldn't be panicked if I were you about Mikko Rantanen signing long-term, because those cap figures had to come out. Right? Because we all knew the cap was going to jump. We were being told it was going to jump. So you got to know those numbers before you can perhaps cement a deal with Mikko Rantanen. Well, little did we know that the Avs didn't wait. Which I think when you throw in today's news with all these other angles that we've been discussing over the past few days, I think it just comes down to Chris McFarland's deep held belief is that essentially swapping Mikko Rantanen for Marty Necas is going to shave a little bit off the top in terms of their talent, at least in the immediate future. We'll see what Marty Necas becomes as a Colorado Ave, but he knows that right now Marty Necas is not better than Mikko Rantanen. So it's a little bit off the top in order to get deeper. Now, they're not a ton deeper. They added only Jack Drury. They only added one depth piece. But at the heart of it, what this Mikko Rantanen trade was that the Avalanche were too top-heavy in the opinion of Chris McFarland. And in order for this team to win its next Stanley Cup, they would have to be willing to take a little bit off their top-line talent to be better depth-wise. And that's why I say there has to be another move, because simply getting Jack Drury as the additional piece does not all of a sudden make the Avalanche a deep team. Deeper, not deep. So the Avs knew that this cap was going to jump, and it would make it more conceivable for them to meet the demands of Mikko Rantanen, which, again, were not market value. Were below market value. They could have easily afforded Mikko Rantanen. There's no other reality. They could have afforded him and not been over the salary cap. They willingly traded him because they want to take the extra money they get from making the deal, plus the extra money they get in the cap jumping, to add depth to this team. And then also a futures bet on Marty Necas either becoming Mikko Rantanen or becoming just a tick under Mikko Rantanen. That's the plan. You can agree with it or disagree with it. I'm always of the belief if you are projecting, if you're saying that a guy can become this, but you have a chance to actually have that guy you're measuring him against, why don't you just get the guy you're measuring him against? If you're saying Marty Necas can become Mikko Rantanen, well, great. You already had a player who became Mikko Rantanen. And you could have added depth using the additional funds you were going to receive from the cap going up $7.5 million. You could afford more than you pay Casey Middlestat, who you're banking on being your second line center. So I'm still not totally in favor of the trade. But the picture becomes more clear when you take into account how the Avs had to know what that number was going to be, and yet they still traded Mikko Rantanen. It's about depth. They want more of it, which an argument can be made, but you got to go get it. And Jack Drury alone is not enough depth. But we'll see over the next 5 games if these are pseudo playoff games. We will see how deep the Colorado Avalanche actually are. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on this Friday. Coming up next, just as rumors of Deion Sanders leaving CU for the NFL came and went, they are now back again, and you will not be shocked to hear what team he is being linked to. Not for this year. It's not New Orleans. It's next coaching cycle. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports on a Friday afternoon. So, the idea of Deion Sanders coaching in the NFL this upcoming season is basically dead, right? One job that is open, New Orleans, and there has been no rumors whatsoever at any point of Deion Sanders taking over that job. But the other positions have been filled. Pete Carroll in Las Vegas and Brian Schottenheimer in Dallas. And just as soon, because only when Brian Schottenheimer and Pete Carroll signed on the dotted line did truly the idea of Deion Sanders coaching in the NFL this season die. Or at least the conversation about him, right? Because nobody's expecting Deion Sanders to leave CU for New Orleans, because the only thing that would appeal about that job is that he wouldn't really have to change a lot of his Coach Prime gear because it's same color scheme. But just as soon as the idea of Deion Sanders being an NFL head coach in 2025 comes to an end, the idea of him becoming a coach in 2026 is born. May I present to you the New York Daily News? It's not difficult from Pat Leonard. It's not difficult to connect the dots. Deion Sanders will immediately become a candidate to be the Giants' next head coach if the team drafts his son, Shedeur Sanders, in April. And to this, I have one question. It's quite simple. Why? Why? Why does he have to be? You already have Shedeur. You got the more attractive of the two assets. Why would he be a candidate? Because of his long-time track record of being able to develop young quarterbacks in the NFL? Because Shedeur Sanders, by allowing himself to be drafted by the Giants, gives up any leverage he and his family might have. So then it's more likely Deion Sanders coaches. I'm just trying to figure out why it's so obvious that he would be. Because he's related to one of the guys on the team. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called nepotism. And I thought that with the whole Bronny LeBron thing, we came out vehemently against the idea of nepotism. So what exactly makes Deion Sanders an obvious candidate for the Giants head coaching job? And here's the challenge too. Tell me why, while not disparaging Shedeur Sanders in any way. Because the only thing I could come up with is the only coach who can actually get through to Shedeur is Deion Sanders. If that's the truth, then that reflects poorly on Shedeur, but would also, to be fair, be a legitimate reason to hire Deion Sanders. This headline or tweet hits me like exactly why Deion Sanders was supposedly, why he had a conversation with Jerry Jones. This is the Giants, or the people that cover the Giants, looking at the few days in Dallas where Deion Sanders and Jerry Jones talked and go, we're jealous of that. We want some of that. We want to dominate the news cycle for a couple of days. Because that's, in the end, all it was for Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders, was just to get them both in the headlines. for Deion to have some leverage over CU, whether it's because of his own contract or getting more money for NIL or getting more money for assistant coaches, depending on what report you believe. And it allowed Jerry Jones to stay where he wants to be, regardless of the reason, and that's in the spotlight. It was the type of thing that an unserious organization would do. So why would the Giants or anybody that covers the Giants look at that and say, we want to be more like them? We want to be an unserious franchise, because I'm here to tell you, Giants, you're already super unserious. There will be a constant reminder of your unseriousness as a franchise on full display 1 week from Sunday in New Orleans. We know you're a clown organization. We know that you don't make good decisions. We see Saquon Barkley in a Philadelphia Eagles uniform. There is zero reason why, after already drafting Shedeur Sanders, why you would entertain the idea of Deion Sanders being your coach. And this is bordering on being super critical of Deion Sanders, and I don't want to do that. What I will say is he is in the perfect spot. That's one of my biggest points. It's just setting up to be like, well, okay, well, now we got to have a different conversation because I like Deion Sanders as a college coach, but let me tell you why he'd be wrong for the NFL. Why do that? Stay in college. And again, this isn't like the worst scenario is Deion coaching his son. I don't understand why anybody in New York would look at this and go, this makes a lot of sense. They should do this. If they're not going to pull a Manning when it comes to New York, and Shedeur would happily go to New York, then you've won. Then there's no reason to even entertain the possibility of hiring Deion Sanders at any point. You already got Shedeur. You're good. Move on. The only reason you bring this up is just for clicks. I'm sorry. It's the only reason you do, because there is not even a good conversation that comes out of this. It's not even thought-provoking. Should Deion Sanders be the head coach in the NFL? No. Moving on. Shouldn't be. Some people are college coaches. Some people are NFL coaches. We have seen many an example of why college coaches don't translate to the NFL. Deion Sanders, everything about him screams college football. You know, and also what screams Deion Sanders is college football is Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders on multiple occasions has gone on the record talking about why coaching in the NFL would be a nightmare for him. He said he would be arrested for assaulting one of his players because he would get so fed up with that mentality at the NFL. This is just such a non-starter. It was a bad idea for both parties when it was floated with the Dallas conversation, and it would be an even worse idea for this to happen in New York. So my answer respectfully to that headline is why? Give me one good reason why Deion Sanders should be considered for next hiring cycle to coach the New York Giants. Nepotism? Cool. Because that's what we want our organizations to make decisions based on, is nepotism. No sense. But it won't go away because we'll talk about it. Even if it's to point out how preposterous the notion is. So just in case I wasn't clear, no, I do not think that Deion Sanders would be a good candidate to be the next Giants head coach this time next season. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. The NBA All-Star reserves have been announced, and Nikola Jokic still has yet, over the course of his career, play with someone who has made an all-star team as his teammate, as Jamal Murray or Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter, or Russell Westbrook for that matter, whoever you think is most deserving, not named Nikola Jokic, of making the all-star game, they didn't. Nikola Jokic will be the lone Denver Nugget once again in the all-star game, which I actually don't have a problem with. I really don't. I don't think any Denver Nuggets got snubbed. And I think it'd be quite counter to what this season has been for the Denver Nuggets if someone else was chosen. Because kind of the whole premise of this Nuggets season, it's not working. And somehow, because even with Nikola Jokic raising his game to a level we've never seen, the Nuggets are getting worse. So they don't deserve another all-star on principle, but also when you look at the guys selected, no one on the Denver Nuggets deserves it over any of these guys. However, there were notable snubs. And I am not normally one to lose a lot of sleep over the guys who are snubbed for all-star games. But in the NBA, it is a little bit different. There's a significant financial impact to being named, as you know, with Jamal Murray, if you are an all-star. And I think in the NBA, even though the game itself is unwatchable, the significance of being selected as an all-star is there, right? I think in a league where super teams are less prevalent, but also guys still want to play with, right? You see it with De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox reportedly only wants to go to San Antonio. Why? To play with Wemby. A lot of the players, when they're going to get traded, still have preferred destinations, still have players they want to play with, and being at all-star games with them is part of that. It's the respect you get being an all-star, but also we're talking about a significant financial windfall to somebody who's in a contract year and becomes an all-star. When those strings are tied to it, it matters very much who did and did not get in. And I look at this list, one guy in the West, I go, Jalen Williams of the Thunder. I go, is he a deserving all-star? Probably, but over Kyrie Irving? Over Domantas Sabonis? Not so sure. So there were for sure snubs in both conferences. But I look at the list and I have a hard time unequivocally saying player X doesn't deserve to get in. Like Jalen Williams is a great example. I look at him and I say maybe there are more deserving players, but I don't look at him and say he's not an all-star. Devin Booker was asked if he thinks all-star game rosters should be expanded. And to that, he said yes. And I would agree. The whole premise of Adam Silver's NBA is that there's enough talent to go around. Don't need to have super teams. Everyone can have their own star, and we can have parity. Well, if that's the case, and you're in a league that has rosters that are 15 players long, why wouldn't you have 15 players on the East and 15 players on the West? Now they're doing something stupid about picking these teams, and it's going to be like a mini tournament. It's going to be unwatchable. It will be for that reason, but for also a bigger reason. But just expand the roster to 15, because if Trae Young is an all-star in the East, nobody's going to complain. He is deserving. If Kyrie Irving is an all-star in the West, everyone would be okay with that. If Domantas Sabonis is an all-star in the West, everybody would be okay with that. We're not unnecessarily expanding. It would be expanding, and there would be enough all-star caliber talent to fill those spots. And who knows, if they did have 15 players, maybe Nikola Jokic's teammates would get a nod. The way Jamal Murray has come on as of late, maybe. But that would be a self-serving reason if you're a Nuggets fan. I think most people can look at this and say 12 is probably not enough with the level of talent spread across the NBA. And it's just making it more difficult for some of these players to get the biggest contract they can because, well, you've never made an all-star team. You've never been an all-pro. So I agree with Devin Booker. I think the roster should be expanded. But not before the however many players are playing in this game give a little bit of effort. If you told me that expanding the rosters to 15 aside would guarantee that players would play hard in the All-Star game, expand it tomorrow. Because as much as All-Star games have lost their luster and we care less and less about them, like, if there is a league that I look at and say they can actually get some of that back, it's got to be the NBA. Right? The physical sports like the NFL and the NHL, they can't replicate what they are. It's become too big a business. You can't ask them to play their normal game when nothing is on the line. You can't ask them to do that. And any fan base that had a player hurt in a Pro Bowl or in an NHL All-Star game would lose their minds. But in the NBA, they don't have that excuse. And maybe expanding to 15 means you have shorter stints on the court, less likely that you get hurt. I mean, I'm not a doctor or major in sports medicine. But if you have more players that you can rotate in and out, perhaps you could give a little bit more effort while you're out there because it's only a shorter amount of time. I think that's probably a stretch, but I'm open to any ideas because there really is no reason why the NBA All-Star Game shouldn't be quite entertaining. Really isn't. And with especially how spread out all the talent is in the league right now. You know, there was a time it's like, well, as long as I get Bosh, LeBron, and D Wade, there's a quarter of my team right there in the East. You know, let's put, or some years put the Cavs against the Warriors. Well, it's not that way anymore. Right? The vast majority of NBA teams have at least one star player. So I think that there's more of an appetite to see them all out on the court together because they're so spread out over the course of the season. It's not like you can tune in to any one NBA game at any point this weekend and see the collection of talent on the court, collection of stars on the court that you could have seen by turning on a Golden State Cleveland game a few years ago. Or a Bulls Jazz game back in the 90s. Right? With the talent being as spread out as it is, I think it's more intriguing to see them all come together. And if they just, and it's goes to one of the big things this week, we talked about it at length yesterday about Adam Silver's terrible idea to make the product better. The All-Star game it's the same thing. Same premise applies. That the lack of effort that is being put in. And it's not that they're not playing hard when they're out there. And I guess I'm more talking about regular season games than I'm talking about the All-Star game. But it's just there's a perception of when I tune in, I'm not getting the level of product I used to. Competitiveness is the word that Tom Thibodeau used. That's what I'll use. Competitiveness. It doesn't feel competitive. All-Star game is that times 10. And that is a lack of effort. So expand the rosters. I think that there's reason to do that. I think it makes sense. And I'm all for deserving players getting what they deserve in terms of their contract, in terms of their accolades. I'm all for it. But let's start with the 10, 12, 15 guys on each team, whatever the number is. Let's start with them playing hard and look like they're trying before we get to all of this other stuff, like splitting them into 4 different teams and all of this stuff that they're going to try this time. It's really quite simple. Everyone's trying to overcomplicate the NBA's issues. It's really not that hard. Competitiveness. So it comes down to All-Star game more so than any other NBA thing. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Nuggets in Philly tonight, but could this be the last dance for the Nuggets core 4? One local sports writer seems to think so. Let you know if I do next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports on this Friday. Ryan Kaufman with you. You can watch the show on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. Nothing last night by way of the Avs and the Nuggets, but they are both in action tonight. The Avs are taking on the St. Louis Blues to begin a stretch that Jared Bednar said this morning. He is treating it like the playoffs, which should, I mean, if you're a better, then if the Avs are this much better than St. Louis anyway, which they are, and they're treating it like the playoffs, I got to see what Jeff Haber's going to stop by in a little bit. Maybe I can ask him what they are. Looks like the Avs are $1.90, $1.85. But even if you took them laying a goal and a half, right? I mean, they're treating this like the playoffs, right? That's coming up at 7 o'clock. At 5:30, at least we think it won't, or we know it won't be 5:30. It'll be closer to 5:45. But Adam Silver says our games need to only take 2 hours. Not going to go back into that. The Nuggets play the Sixers without Joel Embiid, without Paul George. I think without Paul George, I should look. I'll definitely get that information because it's important, but no Joel Embiid. So, unfortunately, now he's just, you could say he's ducking Nikola Jokic altogether. Just doesn't want to play Nikola Jokic ever again. Look, and this is in line with some of the stuff that I've been talking about for the last few days, but a lot of people have been asking me about Mark Kiszla's column in the Gazette about the idea of blowing up their core four. Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon. And of course, one player that is omitted really from the conversation is Nikola Jokic, which we all understand and agree. But I think I've been here for a while, but I don't know that I blow it up as much as I trade one specific player from that core four. The reason why the time is drawing near, according to the headline, is because the player that the Nuggets should look at moving is not eligible to be traded until this offseason, and that is Jamal Murray. Jokic is untouchable, obviously. Aaron Gordon healthy, why would you trade him? And in a three-point shooting league, I get it. The Nuggets take this, they say, look, we have Nikola Jokic. We're kind of different than everybody else. We don't need to jack up a ton of threes. And I think that they're right to an extent. But by trading Michael Porter, you would essentially be giving up the one guy that you actually equate with shooting three-pointers. Jamal Murray's the answer here. Right? If he doesn't morph back into Jamal Murray of 2 years ago during the playoffs, which is a possibility, and that's why no rash decisions need to be made till the offseason. Right? One, you can't trade him until later. And two, there's that possibility. And if Jamal Murray looks like he did in the playoffs 2 years ago, as opposed to the playoffs this year, then it changes the conversation. But this is also about a team getting better in the ways that they need to get better. You know, we just saw Mikko Rantanen get traded. The Avalanche are saying we need to get deeper. I don't know if the Nuggets need to get a lot deeper. Right? Little apples and oranges. You can't shorten your rotation to just 2 lines in the playoffs. Jared Bednar doesn't have that luxury. Right? Michael Malone does. Okay, so to say that the Nuggets need to add a lot of depth, I think is a little bit too much. And none of this is really me saying any one of those core 4, like I'm done with them. And like they're not any good. I think they're all 4 players are good players. But if it doesn't work out this year, the Nuggets have to look at a different plan than Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Julian Strother taking the next step. And they got to stop losing players, because that's been part of it. They're losing players. They're not replenishing them. But they're also they need to, I think, conform a little bit more than they are to the direction the NBA is going. Right? I get it. They don't have to be the Celtics. They don't have to take 56 3-pointers a game. Right? They're built in a different way. But again, you have one player that you would label a 3-point shooter in a league that is dominated by the 3. You have one player. That's not enough. Can you get 2 players? Can you get, dare I say, 3 players that you can have some confidence will hit a 3? And then there's the defensive side of it all as well, trying to replenish what you lost when you foolishly allowed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to go because you didn't want to go in the second luxury tax threshold. This over that second apron. Okay, the perimeter is what I'm talking about here. The Nuggets aren't good enough on the perimeter. And the only way you can get better in a meaningful way is by giving up something meaningful. Jamal Murray has started to look closer to his old self recently. And that's why I say there's a possibility he goes nuclear in the playoffs again. And the Nuggets go to the finals. And I and Mark Kisla and a lot of Nuggets fans back off of the assertion that the Nuggets need a massive change. But that's the bar here. Is it acceptable for this team to lose again to the Wolves? The only place that we can even start to have the conversation of whether it's not a failure of a season if they lose at this stage is if they meet Oklahoma City in the NBA, in the Western Conference Final. Then we can have a conversation. And even then, I don't know, even though Oklahoma City on paper is better, I don't know that a lot of people will be content with the Nuggets going to the Western Conference Finals and losing. I think the only thing short of a championship that most Nuggets fans will accept is a matchup with the Boston Celtics and a loss in the NBA Finals. And then you say, well, they're the most recent champs, right? Matchup of the last 2 champions. Boston wins. Disappointment, but no rash decisions need to be made. You got to give up something to get something. And the thing that the Nuggets are deficient in requires a bigger swing than what the Avalanche feel they are deficient in. That's where I would draw the line between the two. I think the Avalanche depth could have been addressed in another way other than trading Mikko Rantanen. I don't know how the Nuggets do what they need to do to fix this team, to make this team championship contenders again without trading a member of their core. And one of the things that Michael Porter does is part of where the Nuggets are deficient. So I just think it's by process of elimination. Two, you could say the core four all you want. You're not going to trade Aaron Gordon or Nikola Jokic. It's only a conversation about Porter and Murray. And if I'm willing to give up one of those guys, if that's the only way, and it really seems like it is, the only way that the Nuggets are going to be able to recalibrate and get themselves back to where they need to be, I'm trading Jamal Murray. You know, the other night, Christian Brown gets sent to the bench, in part because Russell Westbrook has formed one of the league's best duos with Nikola Jokic. That used to be Jamal Murray's mantle. So, yes, Christian Brown was the guy moved to the bench the other night. But what does Michael Malone's assessment on why he can't bear to move Russell Westbrook to the bench say about Jamal Murray? He was usually the best, one of the best duos in the league along with Nikola Jokic. Now Russell Westbrook is. Which also makes you wonder, could Nikola Jokic form one of the best duos in the NBA with virtually any player? It's possible. I don't want to tempt fate. I don't want the Nuggets to just run through a bunch of different guys playing a two-man game with Jokic and just try get worse, and just see where the limit is. But it seems everything right now seems so clear for this team. Everyone thinks they need to make a move. Everyone can tell that this team is not equipped to take down Oklahoma City or really anybody that reasonably is going to come out of the Eastern Conference. Now, the good news is I think I would probably still take the Nuggets, even as they are right now, over anybody else in the West not named Oklahoma City. Maybe not Minnesota. But what you hope is that they lose to somebody else. I would be worried about another series with Minnesota because I just think they're a bad matchup. I don't think Minnesota, by trading Karl Anthony Towns and bringing in Julius Randle, are actually a better team than the Denver Nuggets. But this matchup is just not a good one for them. But I think I'd take the Nuggets in a 7-game series over Houston, take them over Sacramento, take them over the 2 LA teams. I'd take them over Memphis because John Morant, what's he going to do? Is he going to play? Missed a game again last night. So the West really hasn't caught up to the Denver Nuggets. It's just Oklahoma City, and they have passed them and maybe lapped them. I suppose we'll find out if they do meet up in the playoffs. And then it looks like there are a few teams in the East that are a problem for Denver. So everyone looks and says there are too many teams better than the Denver Nuggets right now. They have to do something. We can all agree on that. It's the easiest thing in the world to say the Nuggets need to make a move. It is next to impossible to figure out what that move is because they are so stuck. For this season, for this trade deadline, they're stuck. Nobody wants anything they're willing to offer. Two of their players are untradeable because even if they wanted to entertain the idea, you can't trade Gordon or Jamal Murray. The rules won't allow it. You're not trading Nikola Jokic. And Michael Porter, it just feels like, how are you really moving the needle and getting better? They can't make a move. Everybody can scream until their lungs get sore that the Nuggets need to make a move. They can't. So they must wait till the offseason. And even when the offseason rolls around, you're going to be having a lot of these same conversations. Nobody's going to want Zeke Naji. Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson are add-ins. You got to, what's the big ticket item? You could throw them in to help facilitate a deal, but what's the big player that the other team is going to be able to hold up to their fan base and say, look what we got? Because it's not Peyton Watson or Christian Brown or Julian Strawther. It's Porter or it's Murray. And if I had to choose, I'm trading Jamal Murray. But therein lies the hope of this season. You can't make that kind of a decision now. You have to let the playoffs happen. And if the Jamal Murray of old shows up and the Nuggets get to an NBA Finals, then it will be all good. And we'll look back and we'll say how silly it was that we were this worried about the Denver Nuggets. But in the moment right now, everybody that is panicking has every right to panic. There's just too big of a discrepancy between what Jamal Murray is in the regular season and what he is in the playoffs. You got to live through 82 games of regular season Jamal Murray, and it leaves you wondering if the Nuggets are even capable of winning a title. But once he shows up, and he thought he showed up in the Lakers series, he wasn't back. If this season ends up where it looks like this season is going to end up, then one of those four players will be gone. And it won't be Jokic, and it won't be Gordon. Are you of like mind? Does this core four need to be broken up? 719-24-7. 1313 more Drive Time Sports after this. Welcome back to the show. I missed this guy over the last couple of weeks. He was traveling the globe. Disconnected a bit, Jeff Haber, from the sports world. You were going I won't divulge where you were, although you're not there now, so I wouldn't be doxing you.
No, I was on a surf trip, but it was 12 days with no connection, like not looking up the news, not looking up sports. I came back to the States and was like, wait, the Commanders beat the Lions? How did that happen? and then seeing, okay. And then the Eagles won. Barkley put up a big game. And then the Chiefs somehow get back to the Super Bowl in a very controversial way.
I don't know if we agree on that. But that would be, and you and I were talking about that when you got back, it would be something impossible. I could not go without, I can't even go to, for instance, my son's basketball game on a Sunday afternoon and be able to go to that game, get home, turn on the game and watch it all time shifted or on DVR or what, You
can't do that.
I can't do that because I promise you, between my radio, my cell phone, or something would alert me. Yeah. I would know most all the time.
Because I will do that. I'll do it where if I have something during a game and it's a game I really want to watch, it's a big game, I will DVR it. I mean, right. I know it sounds old school, but I will turn off the notifications on my phone and then I'll get home, watch it, skip through the commercials. That's a great way to watch a game.
And it is if you don't know
what's happening.
The result.
Yeah.
Because even I am so finicky, I can't, I'll get, somebody will just text me, bruh, or just something.
Right.
And I'm like, now I know that even though I don't, I'll give you a perfect,
something happened.
I'll give you a perfect example. Somebody, the Chiefs Broncos game, I wasn't able to watch live because my son had a game. And I got a text. I can't even remember. I have to look it up. But I thought when I read the text, I was like, the Broncos beat the Chiefs.
Right.
That's what I got. And I was in such a bad mood. And then I watched the entire of the game. I'm like, oh, the Chiefs blocked a field goal and they won. So,
the worst part about DVRing a game and watching it later is you can't look up a player's stats, because then it just shows you what happened in the game and it spoils it. That's the hard part.
I can't look up your fantasy numbers
without looking up fantasy or anything like that. That's the hard part.
Yeah, but I'm kind of jealous because just to be able to,
it was nice,
come back one day and be being able to see all of this stuff that happened wrapped up into one scroll through X or whatever would have been pretty cool. Let me get next week when you come on, we'll obviously really get in the weeds when it comes to these bets for the big game. I should mention off the top that this segment with Jeff, we call it Magic Money Lines, and is sponsored by ESPN Bet. We'll tell you a little bit about what ESPN's got in store for you.
And right now we only got one money line, and we know it's going to shift as the weeks progress. But
sure, one thing that does stick out to me though about and I know I asked you a question, the over under keeps going down. Have you noticed that?
Yeah,
it keeps going down. Some potentially to watch out for as the week goes on. But your initial, I won't hold you to it, but your initial thoughts on where you might be leaning, or even if you tried to buy in early to the game next week.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts, if we're talking about the over-under, we see it keeps going down, I find that so interesting because I think there's going to be a high-scoring game. I don't think, and look, the Eagles got a great defense. I get it. I just think I don't see a score right now. The over-under is 48.5.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see this big game being like a 25-23 game. I see this being a 36-33 game, something high scoring. It's
interesting. It's sharp. And when this early, it's sharp money. It's not the public. It's not the public sentiment that's moving it down. It's big money from sharp bettors that it's moving it down. And I'm curious of what they think's going to happen.
I feel like, when you're betting, you don't want to bet that Mahomes is going to put up 15 points, right? And the Eagles, between Jalen Hurts having all his offensive weapons and Barkley being as dominant as he's been this year, I just don't see a way where the Chiefs hold the Eagles to less than 25 points. I just don't see it.
Have you looked at Saquon's over-under for yards?
I have not. I was looking at a Saquon parlay.
Because that's gonna be the big thing going into. Well, I'm already seeing it. It's the Chiefs have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in like forever.
See, I think Barkley will get there. I don't know if he gets a touchdown though. I bet you, and this happened a lot during the regular season. How many times did Barkley get to the 1-yard line, get stopped, and then Hurts just sneaks it in? Because there's been a lot of, I love parlays. There's a lot of parlays where it's like Hurts gets a touchdown and Barkley. I don't know if Barkley gets a touchdown on this, but I do see him having a really good game, over 80 yards. I would not. I know it's been a while since the Chiefs have lit up 100 yards, but if someone's going to do it, it's going to be Barkley.
114.5.
Yeah, I don't know if
rushing yards for Saquon. That's insane. That's a lot. All right. Or in some, it's, you have to shop around, and obviously ESPN Bet might have some. I'm just looking through some. It looks like anywhere from 112.5 to 114.5.
Yeah.
That's asking a little bit more than, hey, will Saquon break the run of the Chiefs not giving up a 100-yard rusher? That's above and beyond.
Above and beyond. And also, let me ask you this. Do you see if Barkley gets 80 yards and a touchdown, would you, just knowing that, would you say, okay, Eagles are going to win this game?
No.
Do you think they need more than that?
If you told me, I think in that scenario, it would have to be some really good Jalen Hurts stat line.
Right.
If you're telling me that Jalen Hurts is going to toss for, if he accounts for 3 total touchdowns, yeah, I'm thinking Philly wins.
Right.
If Saquon, because I think there's a way that Saquon can have a great game and the Chiefs can still win.
Mm-hmm.
Or not.
Yeah.
He can't dominate, but he can have, like you said, 80, 90 yards, 1 touchdown. I think the Chiefs can still win a game like that.
Yeah. So we think Barkley needs that game where it is 115 yards on the ground and a touchdown.
2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lot of early money coming in on Travis Kelce as the Super Bowl MVP. Is there a way that Travis Kelce wins Super Bowl MVP?
Of course.
And it's not really even with Patrick Mahomes.
Is it impossible? No. Is it likely? Also no. Look, it's the Taylor. I see all these Travis Kelce bets, and I call it the Taylor Swift effect. It's only because we know Taylor Swift's going to be at the game. We know they're dating. It's going to be a big storyline the NFL cares about. So, let's put all these bets that Travis Kelce's going to have this big game. I don't know if he does have a big game. He hasn't had the best season. A lot of people think this could be his last game ever. Mm-hmm. And, maybe that makes him play better if that's in the back of his head. The sentimental choice. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't see him having this really big game there. I was looking at there was a Travis Kelce parlay. See if I can find it on here. Yeah, now I can't.
My biggest thing is, and we have this conversation every year about any dynamic quarterback pass catcher duo. How do you just give it to the guy catching the passes?
Well, it
especially when it's Mahomes,
right? But it's what percentage of Mahomes' touchdowns, and
if they're all to Kelce,
if Kelce gets 2 touchdowns and 100-something yards, and they only score 3 touchdowns in the game, and it's enough to win, that's got to go to Kelce. But if Mahomes spreads it out, where it's a touchdown to 3 different players, and Kelce just happens to be one of them, well, then you still got to give it to Mahomes.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. And like I said, next week we'll really dive into it and all the prop bets, and maybe even some of the goofier ones next week. Are your Your Knicks are not playing tonight,
Tomorrow versus LeBron and the Lakers.
are they? What?
The big ESPN game. Yeah.
Tonight on ESPN, I don't know how big this game is because Embiid is not playing, but I think, Paul George also out. So no Paul George, no Joel Embiid. Sixers are at home against Denver. Denver is favored by 8.5. Where would you go? 8.5 on
Denver.
ESPN bet.
Denver. I can't see the 76ers without George and without Embiid. If you're telling me it's the Nuggets versus essentially Maxey and company.
It is.
I'm taking the Nuggets. I mean, Nuggets have been playing,
and the Nuggets, company doesn't even include Jared McCann. Can't forget that he's out.
And
his
look,
TikToks.
The Denver had one of the best offenses in January, and sure they just lost to the Knicks, but they played well versus the Knicks. It wasn't like it was a close game through and through, and they played well even with Jokic in foul trouble. So I don't see the Nuggets having any issues versus the 76ers. It's like our buddy Josiah, who's a 76er fan here in the office. Embiid, he's used up all of his PTO.
That's the truth. But yeah, that's what it is on ESPN Bet. Denver minus 8.5 on the road in Philly. No Paul George, no Joel Embiid tonight. And we'll see Westbrook and Gordon in the starting five and not Christian Brown tonight, I think, based on what they did against the Knicks.
Yeah, and Westbrook's been playing well with Jokic.
Yes.
The two of them have been very good at pairing. I think a lot better than a lot of us thought they would be.
100%, which begs the question, can Nikola Jokic do this with anybody?
Yeah.
Like how, I don't want to, Can I
throw out this crazy scenario?
Yes, please do, because that's what a Friday is for.
We've heard kind of like the Butler Nuggets rumors. What about De'Aaron Fox to the Nuggets for some sort of combo of picks, Aaron Gordon, and some of the young guys, maybe even Brown? I think Fox-Jokic combo could be, even with Murray and the two of them in the backcourt, defense would be questionable. But man, that would be an insane duo.
I love the idea of De'Aaron Fox on the Nuggets. I was just talking about not De'Aaron Fox, but this premise of if the Nuggets don't win this year to some degree, whether it's win it all, win the West, whatever it is, do they break up their core four in Porter, Gordon, Jokic, and Murray? And obviously we know one of those four guys is going nowhere.
Right.
I would if you could just allow me to match make, 100% De'Aaron Fox with Nikola Jokic would be great. I would take your trade and your idea, but I would see if Jamal Murray include Jamal Murray and swap him out for De'Aaron Fox.
I think Nugget fans riot if they trade Murray for Fox, because I don't see that being a huge upgrade, because you have to imagine you're going to give up picks and more to do a swap like that. I would love to see too, and I also think Butler, a swap of like Butler and Gordon, or Butler and Porter Jr., where you get a little bit better defensively. That would be an interesting swap as well, where you get a really good, Butler's going to still put up a lot of points as a secondary, tertiary scorer on this team, and then you get the added defense, and you do get a championship mentality guy with Butler.
I just can't have this guy. I can't unsee what I'm seeing right now. Like, he's leaving when they said he's coming off the bench. He's missing flights. Like, it reminds me of when Andy Bernard was coming back to the office and going to be the manager, and he did this whole tableau where he dressed up in like janitorial clothes, and he's like trying to mop the carpet, and he's spilling soup all over himself. And Aaron goes up to him and says, some of these images are going to be hard to shake. Like, that's how I feel about Jimmy Butler. Like, yeah. I've been a fan of Jimmy Butler for a long time, playoff Jimmy, and we have playoff Murray and all that kind of stuff. But the level of petulant child that he is at right now,
Yeah.
if I'm a team that might acquire him,
You know-
I'd be like, I don't know that I want this guy.
And you don't think Malone gets him into shape and says, "Hey, we're here to win a championship."
If he culture doesn't, nobody's going to. Other than him going exactly where he wants to go.
Yeah, it's insane.
Which I don't think
it's
is
insane the amount of coaches he's had problems with. I mean, he had issues with Thibodeau,
Tibbs.
which another guy who is just, hey, we're here to win, do your job. And it doesn't seem like Butler is that. But I just think in terms of a fit, a chemistry fit, hey, because I don't think we're in the unison that Nuggets are the best team in the West anymore. I think we got the Thunder. Rockets have been playing really well. So the Nuggets, as you say, what happens to the core four if they don't make the Western Conference Finals? You got to break it up.
Yeah.
And part of this issue with the Nuggets, I think this year is you lost KCP, who was such a big part to the team. I mean, those other guys who are outside the core four really do matter. I mean, Bruce
Preacher, choir. I've been on
Bruce
that
Brown,
since
too.
July. Yeah,
Uncle
no,
Jeff.
I'm 100% with you. And I would right now, speaking of ESPN Bet, is easy segue into where they currently have it. They do have Denver as the second most likely team out of the West to win the title. Now I'm looking at title odds, not odds to get out of the West.
Did not make it to the NBA Finals.
Boston plus 200, OKC plus 225, Cleveland is plus 850, and then there's Denver at plus 1200. Coincidentally, same odds as New York.
Yeah.
To win the title. So ESPN Bet is still saying, yeah, we'll keep our position with the Nuggets. And I think it's because the Rockets are early. The idea that the Rockets are just going to have this breakout season and go all the way to the finals is a little much. Minnesota is not as good without Cat. I think we could say that. Lakers are kind of like the Denver Nuggets, where you look at them and you're like, yeah, they're missing something. LeBron and AD certainly look at their team and go, we're missing something.
There's a lot of teams in the West where it's these teams that really have two or three big names and nothing else. The Suns, the Lakers, the Clippers. And I just don't see any of those kinds of teams making it out of the West.
No.
And when you look at and when you watch the Thunder play, I mean, gosh, there are times where it feels like that is going to be an unstoppable team. Who's going to beat them in the West?
And
I don't know if any team matches up well versus them.
And by the way, Chet Holmgren is set to be reevaluated from his injury that he's missed, I don't know, forever.
And
they haven't even had Chet Holmgren.
They almost don't miss him. They don't miss him. Harnstein's done such a good job. They don't miss him. And then,
Jalen Williams. Your guy. You miss him, don't you?
Yeah, I do. But Jalen Williams, all-star, rightfully so. Dort has had such a good defensive season. I just don't the chemistry that team has. Didn't Shea just put up 52
recently? In a loss? And took an L.
Crazy.
Took an L. Shot 21 free throws.
Well,
so
that's Shea in a nutshell.
So yeah, it is.
Gets to the line.
All right. So you fit, but if Boston, essentially you're saying Boston OKC, do you feel that way, or do you think that there is let me ask it this way. Which team, if I told you ESPN Bet says Boston OKC essentially,
right,
which team do you think is most likely to not make that happen? You think it's either Boston more likely to knock out of the East or OKC more?
Boston. Boston. I don't think Boston's going to have a problem with the Cavs. I think if Boston matches up against the Knicks who built a team to match up against the Celtics, and man, the way that the Knicks have been playing, they demolished the Grizzlies. They just beat the Nuggets.
After demolishing them, let's not forget what the Knicks did to the Nuggets in Ball Arena.
In Denver, right. Yeah. And so, man, I things are finally starting to click with the Knicks. And that's the part where it's like, man, if things are clicking, then it gets real scary. They're missing Mitchell Robinson. He comes back and it becomes a much better piece for their bench unit. That could be, the Knicks could be a scary team. And I think a lot of teams, and I know the Timberwolves, this is something that they've been saying, is it takes time to build chemistry. I think a lot of people thought this Knicks team would need a full year. I mean, hell, even the big three from the Heat, Bosh, Wade, and LeBron, They didn't have a great start to that season.
I'm one of those guys, and I think you and I actually talked about it when the trade went down. I said, history says you don't make a move this big and win immediately.
No,
history tells you that.
And then but where I'm saying is, if there's any team that's going to beat the Celtics, it's a team like the Knicks who have built up this chemistry really quickly, and if everyone's healthy, that's the team that could beat the Celtics. And then when I look at the West, I see a lot of really good above average teams. I just don't see a team that's going to overthrow the Thunder, except for a Nuggets team. But man, they need some better bench pieces.
I know. And that's what everyone's screaming from the rooftop, that they need to make a trade. Well, it's hard to mock a trade for them because they can't trade Gordon. They can't trade Murray because of signing them to extensions, and anybody they'd be willing to part with probably isn't going to fetch them what they need. But those are tomorrow's problems. Tonight, it's no Embiid, no George in Philadelphia at 5:30. Again, Nuggets 8.5-point favorites on ESPN Bet. And speaking of, make sure you download the ESPN Bet app and check out their big game giveaway promo for your chance at $1 million in prizes. 25 winners will walk away with $10K in cash, and 7,500 winners will get $100 in bonus bets. No deposit or bet is required. You can opt in today in the ESPN Sportsbook app. Must be 21 or older and present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, of course, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Jeff Haber, was looking forward to having you back in studio.
Yeah,
you lived up to the hype. Thanks for joining me, and we'll do it again next week and be all big game all the time.
Can't wait.
Yeah. That's Jeff Haber. Check him out on 98.9 Magic FM. More Drive Time Sports after this. Great having Jeff Haber from 98.9 Magic FM. That's his day job, but enjoy chopping it up with him, and we'll get into it more next week with the Super Bowl and be talking about the bets. Those are the two things. Well, one was the over-under that I keep seeing go down, and I'm like, because I feel like already it's going to be over. Do I wait for it to drop even more? Because always the flip side of that is, what if enough people are looking at it the way I'm looking at it, and then it starts to creep back up, and now the value isn't there? I probably need to lock that in. 48.5 right now, the over under for the Super Bowl. And yeah, Saquon to hit the over doesn't just need 100. 113, 114, 115 yards. Now, is that total or is that just rushing? So I have to look more into that. But that over-under looks like, I got to get on that sooner rather than later. A couple of your texts here. Tom says, Knicks are only scary to the Knicks. They will screw it up. Easy homer Celtics. Gonna smoke them. I agree with Jeff in that if I were to remove one team, the way they look right now, because if you watch Boston, I think you'll concede this, Tom, is that the Celtics look a little bit worn out at times. They look a little bit over the whole thing. And so they don't look on occasion like this juggernaut that they turned out to be last year. And it's the same thing with the playoff Jamal Murray stuff. Like, when the playoffs roll around, could that juggernaut Celtics team show up? Yes, absolutely they can. And not the Knicks, not anybody in the East is going to be able to beat that Boston team. But right now, Oklahoma City is playing like the best team in basketball. And when you divide it into two conferences and forget about the East and how Oklahoma City compares to the East, the gap between Oklahoma City and the next best Western Conference team is wider than it is. So I get Jeff's logic. But I am also with you, Tom, in that I will still expect the Celtics to be making the NBA Finals. But it is interesting that a lot of the books still have Denver there. But like, you ready to anoint Houston immediately? Right now, you're ready for Houston to just break out, go all the way to the finals? John Morant missed another game last night. I don't know. From the 719, forget the old Jamal Murray and trade him. Let go of the past, friend. I think, and this is of little comfort in the moment right now, but by the end of the year, all this stuff about break it up, don't break it up, it will be the easiest thing once this season comes to an end. It will be, because I'm not the only person still leaving open the possibility that playoff Jamal shows up. By far, I'm not the only one. But this will be, if he doesn't, for whatever reason, injury or otherwise, you'll be like, okay, there was that magical run, and now look, the last 2 years, haven't gotten it. That's the thing. There's all this consternation right now, and it's difficult because it just doesn't look like the Nuggets. And that's where I still don't make the trade, but where I can understand where Chris McFarland is coming from when it comes to the trading Mikko Rantanen. What else are they going to do to improve their team if they believe they need to improve their team to become a Stanley Cup contender? Who else are they going to trade? They're not trading Kale. They're not trading Nathan McKinnon. I would keep those two players over Mikko Rantanen. Devon Taves is to the Avalanche what Aaron Gordon is to the Denver Nuggets. You're not trading that guy. And then you go down the list. You're not trading Arturi Lehkonen, who is an absolute bargain and is scoring goals for you. You're not trading him. You can't trade Nichushkin because he's hurt. You can't trade Gabriel Landeskog because he's hurt. You just got the goaltenders. You're not going to do anything with them. All of a sudden, you whittle it down. There are not many other players that the Avalanche can offer up and get something in return. I still don't make the Mikko Rantanen deal, but I understand why they went Mikko Rantanen over Taves, Makar, McKinnon, and why they couldn't do anything about Nichushkin and Landeskog. And with the Nuggets, right now, they need to make a move. But they have nothing of value to offer anybody. They have nothing to offer that you can reasonably expect the Nuggets to move the needle with their return. Trading Michael Porter is giving up the very thing that I'm saying the Nuggets need more of. You going to give me 2 3-point shooters for the price of Michael Porter? Then, okay, let's see where that goes. I don't think they can. Can't trade Murray. Can't trade Gordon. Not going to trade Jokic. These other guys don't have value. So they're backed into a corner. They've made their bed. They have to lie in it for this season, unless they get a gift from the buyout gods. They just don't have any say over improving their team this year. But rest of the season plays out, whether it ends in a title or not, some 2 rounds short, a round short, wherever it might be, we'll all reconvene at that time, and it will be the most clear thing ever. Be like, yep, got to break up the core 4. Simple as that. No consternation. That's the way they got to do it. It will be, or they don't need to. And we need to stop worrying so much about the regular season. It will be crystal clear. It will be one of those 2 things. But right now, we're a long way from that. Right now, we try to throw 18 different machinations of a trade on NBA Trade Machine to just be denied every single time because the Nuggets just are so, their roster is just so poorly put together. Their salary cap table is so poorly put together. Because they thought, but they didn't care because they thought this team was good enough. Not looking like that right now. Coming up tonight, again, Avs, Blues at 7, Nuggets, Knicks, or Nuggets, Sixers, talking a lot of Knicks today. Nuggets, Knicks at 5:30 here on Extra Sports 1300. At 7, we have Air Force hockey against RIT. I will be in Fort Collins for Air Force women's basketball, so I may talk to you then. If I don't, enjoy your weekend, and we'll reconvene on Monday and getting ready for that football game of great significance, which you can hear right here on Extra Sports 1300.